Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Grind. My name is Kelly Johnson, your fun and friendly host. We are on episode 50, the very best one yet. Shout out to my podcast team, Ambiguous Network, and fellow pods on there. Where to find more about the network? Head over to ambiguouspodcastsolutions.com. If you're interested in joining the network, reach out to Will Tershuk and his team. Today's our final episode of season 1, so crazy how time flies, right? So before launching our season 2 next week, feel free to check out our journey so far, share your feedback with us, and get us on the map. So help us grow, share this episode with a friend, tag them on social, send them the link, and give us a quick review and rating on Apple. So strength in numbers, and I think last week's episode with Richard Dodd, I provided a fun fact about running and was a hit. So we're going to do the same on this podcast going forward. So fast facts with hashtag KellyFast here. So just before we go live with our special guest of the day, let's have our fast fact about today's theme. So strength and weight training. So there are over 650 muscles in the human body, and muscles, as you know, are comprised of muscle fibers. Each fiber is thinner than a human hair and can support up to 1,000 times its own weight. And finally, with all factors being equal, an individual who moves 200 pounds a distance of 2 feet has done more than a person who has lifted 300 pounds on 1 foot. So keeping the intro short, as Dr. Hartle is an accomplished chiropractor, a true daily grinder, and much, much more. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Dr. Michael Hartle. So he's not only a chiropractic physician, but has several certifications in health, nutrition, chiropractic, sports, and strength and conditioning. He is also a Master Strong First certified instructor. He is the co-developer of Strong First SFL barbell certification, and he travels around the U.S. and the world teaching barbell and kettlebell certifications. He currently lives and works in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being on the podcast today. I'm super excited to learn more about your story. Can you tell our new listeners out there, if they haven't come across you all over the world or in the U.S., who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Well, again, my name is Dr. Michael Hartle. I was originally born in California. My dad was in the U.S. Navy back then, but eventually moved back to Minnesota and lived there for 20 plus years. Went to school there, did all my schooling there. Worked for a couple years just outside Green Bay, Wisconsin for some other doctors, and then moved down to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and bought our own practice in '96. So I've been here ever since. So I've enjoyed it immensely. I've been a chiropractic physician for 27 years. I did powerlifting for 20 years at the national level, and then I played semi-pro football for 10 years. And then the last several years, just been enjoying life and going around the world teaching for Strong First. In addition to my practice, I teach barbell and kettlebell certifications.
Quite a resume and quite a background. You have a lot of different experiences have built up to what you do currently today, and also inspiring others out there in the realm of fitness, strength, or just in general, a lot of different things. So I guess maybe first and foremost, how'd you become interested in delivering primary care as a chiropractic physician?
Well, when I was 18, I hurt my back, and a friend of mine recommended me to go see a doctor of chiropractic to fix it. So I went in, and he said he could fix me, but it would take a while. A year after seeing him, I competed in my first powerlifting meet, so I did well with that. And then I continued powerlifting, and at the time I was going through electrical engineering at the University of Minnesota. And I decided to switch gears and get my biology major, and then I went to Northwestern Health Sciences University, which is in Bloomington in Minnesota, went to school there, and then I became a doctor of chiropractic. The reason I became a doctor of chiropractic versus a medical doctor is I didn't want to have to do with drugs or surgery. Obviously, those things have their own place in the healthcare system, and they do work, but I wanted to deliver healthcare to people without using drugs or surgery. That's also why I have a diploma in nutrition as well, too, because I wanted to be able to deliver more natural nutrition to patients who decided they wanted to go that route versus the other route.
Wow, yeah, that's an interesting background. It's cool how personal experiences and just like how life events happen and just where you are and the timing and everything. Really cool. That's great. Also, what motivated you to further become master SFG instructor with Strong First. So it's a lot of mouthful of words on a lot of your certifications, but lots of credibility there and on what you do. Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I competed in powerlifting for 20 years. Near the end of that, I met Pavel Sassaline, who's the owner of Strong First, and he invited me to a certification. I went there, went through the kettlebell. At that point, I thought a kettlebell was a big paperweight, basically like a cannonball with a handle on it. And so he taught me and a bunch of other people how to use it. And then he recognized in me that I had some leadership skills, so he wanted to have me join the leadership team. So I did that, and slowly moved up the ranks to the master, which is the highest level in Strong First. About 15 of us around the world, 14 or 15. And then in 2012, Pavel contacted me and wanted me to help make the barbell certification a part of Strong First. So he and I worked together for about 6 months and developed the manual, and we've been teaching it ever since 2013. So I've been lucky. I've been on every continent in the world except for Antarctica, which I do want to go to someday. But I've been to Korea, been to Japan, been to South Africa, Australia, and all over Europe and the United States, Canada, U.S. So I've enjoyed it immensely. It's been a great opportunity to do that, but it's also a great opportunity to share with students what strength is. And strength is just how much you can lift. Strength, as far as one of our codes, is strength has a greater purpose. And it's a greater purpose than just being able how much I can pick off the floor. Strength in your attitude and your personality and everything else is also a big aspect of all that.
Really well said there. That's cool that you got to travel all over the world, and yeah, we're really goal driven on this podcast. So I have faith in you that you will achieve that one goal or bucket list item of Antarctica sometime soon. That's really great there. Speaking of strength that's a big word right there, and with Strong First hasn't been around too long. That's pretty new, right?
Well, so Pavel was involved in another organization since 2001 or two. And he worked with another gentleman there, and then they decided to split ways. And so he created Strong First in 2012. But he's been dealing with kettlebell stuff since when he was back. He's from the old Soviet Union. He had kettlebells there. He brought them over to the United States and kind of popularized it here. So he's been doing it for maybe 20, 25 years. And that kind of thing. But Strong First has been around since the end of 2012, and it's grown immensely. It's a huge organization and everything else, and I'm very honored to be part of it.
I'm not part of the organization yet, but we're proud to have you on the Daily Grind. Yeah. Yeah. And also just to add on, not just with your involvement with Strong First, but also what motivated you to be a clinical nutritionist and also certified chiropractic sports physician, certified strength and conditioning specialist, also active release technique provider?
Yes, I've done all that stuff. I've done active release since '95. Been a CSCS, which is certified strength and conditioning specialist, since '93. And then also a diplomatic nutrition. So all those things help me in doing what I do, and kind of basically it's inside my skull, and I basically share with all my patients and my students. And even when I'm teaching a Strong First certification, I share my doctor things that I've done to other patients and everything else. And so people can realize that when they have a client come into their gym, someone who's hurting or whatever else, they can also help with that aspect too. In addition, if they need to, they can refer them to a doctor to get treatment and everything else, but they can actually work with those people as well too. So.
Yeah, I think with all your credentials and you just have the experience and you're able to share that and flag issues or see some help a patient or a client right away, that's really great. I think you being able to share your wealth of knowledge with others is important in today's society. I think a lot of things, just learning in general, continuous learning too, is important as well. But with that well-rounded background, do you have a preference in a specific area that you've served?
I always tell patients that my name of my clinic is Allen County Family and Sports Chiropractic. Our third word is family. So we deal with a lot of family kids. My youngest patient was 2 days old. Mom brought him in because he wouldn't latch on when she was trying to breastfeed. So obviously you can't bring him to a medical doctor because they do drugs or surgery. They can't do either one on a 2-day-old baby. So by adjusting him and everything else, we got him to latch on that night. My oldest patient is 93 years old. A sweet old lady. She comes in with her cane and she gets adjusted. A great lady. So we take care of that. But I have to say, probably my favorite is probably dealing with sports injuries. One, because I've been competitive for most of my life, as far as either powerlifting or football, or when I was in high school, I did track and field as well too. I used to race 10-speed bikes when I was younger, so I used to do all these different things. So helping someone who's been told, like for example, we had a guy from I lived in Fort Wayne, from Indianapolis, about an hour and a half away. He was told by his medical doctor to stop squatting. It was bad for his knees. Well, this guy wanted to powerlift, so he wanted to get a second opinion. He found out I was in Fort Wayne, drove up an hour and a half. I said, look, after assessing him and going through all his assessments, I said, we can help you. But I said, you need to be here, 2-3 times a week for the next 3 or 4 weeks. He drove up 2-3 times a week from Indy, got treated, went back home. He was able to start squatting again and not have any pain and do it properly. But unfortunately, the doctor who told him that, this patient didn't want to listen to that. So he sought someone out. He came. So I enjoy doing those things of restoring hope and faith in people to be able to continue, whether they're a tennis player, golf player, football player, powerlifter, whoever. I enjoy helping those people do that.
That's really great. Like family oriented. Also with the sports background, you playing sports as an athlete and coaching as well. So I think having both sides of the spectrum are important. And again, you can recognize, you can share that wealth and knowledge with others, and to be able to help them achieve their own personal growth, whether it's on the field or on the court or off the field, things like that. I'm guessing, you deal with, the average, like you mentioned, you deal with the average, the elderly lady or someone that's a little bit younger. Like you deal with different ages and skill levels. Is there, with that patient, is there like an average time you spend with them roughly, or is it vary? Like some people you only work with a week, others for a while?
Yeah, it varies. I mean, there's some patients who, once you understand what's wrong with the patient, you got their diagnosis, it doesn't take long to adjust them or treat them. But some patients may be longer because maybe they have more complicating things. I have one lady, she's a nurse at the VA hospital, and she has bilateral shoulder issues to the point where she's got numbness going down her arms and everything else, and she can't sleep at night. So I'm working on both rotator cuffs. So it takes me longer to treat her because I've got to work on both rotator cuffs, which I work all around the shoulder, work on her shoulder capsule and everything else. But other patients may be 2 or 3 minutes because they just come in for an adjustment once a month and that's all they want. So it varies with patients, but we can deal with both.
And then do you see also, I mean, maybe it probably depends on the time of year. Do you see, like in the sports realm, do you see more people of a certain sport, like more football players versus tennis players or things like that? Or it just really depends on the season, that like if it's in the fall versus the spring?
Yeah, we do tend to see more, for example, in the fall, more soccer and football players and everything else because that's the high school season for that. Winter season, we got basketball, not too many of those. But tennis, can go year round because they have indoor courts here. So they can go year round with that. Golf, not too many in the wintertime, but it's interesting because I find with golfers, especially the older they get, that when they're in the summertime, with their golfing, 3-4 times a week, they're in great shape, they feel good. When November hits or when they start closing down the courses, that's when their aches and pains show up because they're not moving around. They're sitting in their chairs. So I invite them to come in and get treated, but also, too, to get out there and get moving, whether they walk at the indoor mall or they go to a driving range and hit the golf clubs or whatever else to keep moving. So we do tend to see people like that. I have a few ice hockey patients. All my children have played ice hockey in addition to football and all that other sports, so we got injuries with that. You said I'm a CCSP, which is Certified Certified Chiropractic Sports Physician. I use that a lot too. So my middle son played high school hockey. He had a teammate that always dislocated his left shoulder. So with his parents' permission, because he was underage, he would dislocate his shoulder, and I told him, I said, if I can relocate that here right now, it's a lot better for him than him to go to the hospital where they probably have to give him anesthesia to be able to relocate the dislocated shoulder. So he would be laying on the floor of the hockey locker room. I do my assessment. That's the only problem I got to deal with. I relocate it, and he'd be great to go. I would keep him out of the rest of the game because I don't want to go back in, but he'd be able to go. Did that with my semi-pro football team too. There's many times where I play defensive tackle. I do the play, and then a player would get hurt. I take my helmet off. I go over and check on the player, make sure they're okay. And he's like, "Why are you here? You're the opposite team." And thinking I'm about to like kick him or something. I said, "No, I'm a doctor too. So I'm not a player anymore. I'm a doctor now. Now I go back to playing." So anywhere I go, I use that as far as being able to help people. So that's my job in life, so to speak.
That's really interesting. I do like to your like hands on. You're right there, and again, sharing that wealth of knowledge. You're able to help not just the high school level, what you've done in your career as a football player, which is a perfect transition. But one of your latest passions, playing semi-pro football. Can you tell our listeners more about how you became a defensive tackle?
Yeah, so my first football team I played for was the Lima Warriors out of Lima, Ohio. So I used to drive like 75 miles one way to go play for them. And then there was a team that just south of here, about 20 minutes in Decatur, Indiana, called Adam County Patriots. So I joined them because a friend of mine from Lima Warriors played for them too. So I started playing for them. We had really good success. 2007, 2008, we went undefeated as a team. So we won like 26 games. We went down to Florida, played the national championship game. We won that. So we had really good success with that. And then after that team, the team decided to stop playing. Then I went and played for a team called Miami County Blitz. They did a great job too. So I played for them for 5 years, and then hung up my helmet. And but I still to this day, even at the young age of 52, I stopped playing when I was 48. I enjoyed it immensely. I always told my patients I took out my weekly frustrations on the other football players. So when I came in to treat them, I was not having to deal with it, do it on them. So they always said, "Thank you, thank you." But obviously a joke there. But still, I enjoyed it immensely. I always love defensive stuff. I don't care if you're playing hockey, lacrosse, football, soccer. I've always been a defensively minded person. My children are always that way too. My son Anthony was a defensive assistant captain on his high school hockey team. My son Marcus played it forward on the hockey team, but he always has a defensive mind. He plays defense in lacrosse, very good player. So again, I've always been defensive oriented, and I was a bigger size, so I played nose tackle, defensive tackle, and I mean, you're right in the scrum of everything. I mean, literally, you're this far away, you're like inches away from the player in front of you, and the ball gets snapped, boom, you do the impact with that. I always enjoyed that. It just seemed to be more. I didn't want to play offensive lineman and I did for a while, but the thing is, it drives me nuts that, okay, so your pass protection, I'm going backwards. Wait a minute, I need to go forwards, but obviously it's against the rules of football to do that. So defensively, my job is to go eat the quarterback. That's what I always tell my patients. Or I always tell my patients, I make the center wish he wasn't born. And I've obviously be somewhat mean there, but still, my job is to basically disrupt their offense. Mm-hmm. So that's why I've always enjoyed playing defensive tackle.
Oh, that's great. I really like the personal experiences and just sharing it with our audience. Your history in the making here. You're our first football player on the Daily Grind, which is awesome. I don't have a background in football. I'm the tennis person, the tennis and running. But I give you so much kudos in regards to probably all the training and strength and everything that goes into being a football player and things like that. Can you share with our listeners what it took to be at that high caliber level? You guys went to nationals in Florida. It definitely takes a lot of work and grind and sweat and everything.
Oh yeah, and obviously our football season we play during the fall. Usually our first game is after Memorial Day. We play June, July, and August. We usually have playoffs September, October. So we're playing in 95-degree heat with 3 hours of football wearing full football gear. Trust me, it's the greatest weight loss program you've ever done. I probably lose 10 pounds a game. Of course, I gain back 5 pounds driving home, drinking water, and everything else. But, boy, yeah, a lot of hard training. So when I played for the Adams County Patriots, we had 2 practices a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and our games were Saturdays. So what I would do is Tuesday and Thursday mornings, when I wasn't treating patients, I'd go to the local high school track. I'd do my sprint workouts, do my agility workouts. And then I'd take about a half hour off, go to my gym, then I'd do the barbell stuff and kettlebell stuff as far as what we're specifically involved with that day. And then I'd go home, I'd take a shower, eat, and everything else, and go see patients in the afternoon. And then Saturdays we obviously play a game. I was still, when I went from powerlifting to playing football, it was more of a mental issue there because I had a very hard time giving up my absolute strength. For example, my best back squat is 705 pounds. And I realized that having that back squat of 705 was not going to allow me to play football, because when I'm squatting 705, it took maybe 5 to 7 seconds to go down and up with it. 5 or 7 seconds. A football game lasts 180 minutes, 3 hours or more. And so my job, when I used to coach football for 16 years, my job was to hopefully get that football player at the end of the fourth quarter feeling just as good as the first quarter, because then that injuries happen when people are tired. And so my job was to get that way. So I had to give up that absolute strength, and I had to train more for strength endurance. And training for strength endurance was a whole different ballgame with that. So I had to work on more speed and more endurance, and that's why. So I probably would train 2 hours on Tuesdays, 2 hours on Thursdays, and then go to practice at night those nights, and then a game on Saturday. And it did me well, because that's why I started playing football at 38 and I stopped at 48. And people said at age 38 I was freaking nuts for going on a football field at age 38 with a bunch of 22-year-olds and 18-year-olds and everything else. And I said, well, if I'm still whipping their butt, no big deal. And obviously, we still did that. I had one kid who, it was funny. He was a center. I was a nose tackle, so I, got to him quite a bit during the game. And he shook my hand after. He goes, "How old are you?" And I said, "I'm 39." He goes, "My God, my dad in the stands is 38, and he's sitting there, and you're out here playing." He goes, "Good job." So, yeah, it was kind of cool to say that. But yeah, it's a lot of hard training with that. A lot of, I have my own gym at my clinic, so I'd open up my doors because I wanted to be able to train with the humidity and the heat. I didn't want to be comfortable in air conditioning. I like to use a phrase, we use it in Strong First to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. When I used to coach football, and it'd be a cold October Sunday, and it would be like maybe 35, 36 degrees out. The kids got their hands in their pants trying to keep them warm and everything else. And I said, "Take your hands out of your pants." They go, "Why, coach?" I said, "The other team's got their hand in their pants. All those kids don't want to be here. The more comfortable you become with this cold weather, the better you're going to be able to beat them, or at least do well against them." And so I teach that. So I had to learn to become uncomfortable with the uncomfortable too, or comfortable with the uncomfortable. So I, get as hot as hell in my gym, train with that, and it worked well, because when I was sweating my butt off during the game, I wasn't uncomfortable because I become comfortable with that. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's really great insight, and I like too you playing football, having your background in coaching, 16 years as a coach, as well as having your own kids in multiple different sports, and also too being able to. I didn't mention this before, or when we asked the football question, you were playing football and still working as a chiropractor. So you're balancing multiple schedules at once and staying organized, staying on top, and performing exceptionally well in both areas. So being able to have that mindset, staying focused, and having that those mantras that you mentioned, whether it was coaching those players or even in your own gym, I think that's really important for our listeners out there, as well as people that want to, better themselves in their respective sport. Yeah, I guess more advice or more key takeaways for our listeners that are working towards their own respective sport out there, how to stay motivated, like towards getting a PR and a lift, or winning their competition, helping their team win a conference or a state title, things like that.
Right. So one of the things I teach at my Strong First certifications is I always bring up a quote from a good friend of mine, Yoda. You know who Yoda is?
Yeah.
A friend of mine. And unfortunately he passed away, but he used to say, "Do or do not, there is no try." And I'm a firm believer in that, because a lot of times when people say, "I'm going to try to do this," that usually, most times, it means that basically they say that because if they don't do it, then they can fall back. So I said I tried. Again, it's one of those things. It's a mindset. It's a mentality. It's an attitude. And so my attitude. So like you said, I was coaching my son's football team. I was being a full-time chiropractic physician, and I was playing football at the same time, doing all three. And so it was a big, huge time involvement, but I felt it was necessary to be able to do that. One, I always told my kids I'd coach them. Number two, I wanted to play football myself, because I realized as we get older, that we won't be able to do this at some point. So I wanted to do it then. And also I needed to keep working to help patients and everything else. So it's a mentality aspect, and you either do or do not. There is no try. So again, that's one phrase I would use with a lot of people. And then the other thing too, like I said earlier, become comfortable with the uncomfortable. And then also in the uncomfortable now is comfortable. So you've heard of go outside the box, so to speak, that kind of stuff. But keep making your box bigger and bigger and bigger. So again, it's like when I used to coach track and field in the springtime, I told the kids that we were going to have practice. The only time we don't have practice if there's a lightning strike in our area. There's specific high school rules about that. But if it's snowing, sleeting, hailing, raining, I don't care if it's coming down sideways, we're still practicing. And they say, why, coach? Because we may have a meet in that weather. So if we have a meet in that weather, we should practice in that weather too. Otherwise, you'll have no clue how to handle yourself or handle the baton in a relay or whatever else when it's wet. So, when it'd be dry out, I take a baton and I take my water bottle and I get it wet. I say, now go use it. Well, coach, the baton is wet. What are you going to do when it rains? Or I take a football and it was dry out and I just squirt water over the football, hike the ball, run with the ball, throw the ball. Because you're going to have to do that when it's raining out. Mm-hmm. So again, the more you become comfortable with that kind of stuff, the better athlete you'll be. Even if you're a recreational athlete, joining a adult soccer league, mm-hmm. or let's say you're a tennis player. Mm-hmm. I know tennis players, they have rankings or ratings like a 3.5, 4.0. Let's say you're, I don't know if there's a 2.0, but let's say you're down there. Mm-hmm. But join that. But the more you become comfortable with that stuff, the better athlete you'll be. And the same thing too, you can even translate that to relationships, to financial aspects, and everything else. Let's say you want to put $400 away a month for your retirement. Well, that's going to be uncomfortable because now you have $400 less you can spend. But the more you get used to it, and the more you do it, next thing you know, in 15 years, you got quite a nice nest egg built up. Mm-hmm. So I firmly believe in doing that.
Mm-hmm. Really, really well said there, Dr. Hartle. Really great key takeaway. Being comfortable with the uncomfortable, and like you mentioned before, just tie it on. It's in sports and even outside sports too, in your daily life, in your daily grind, what you're doing out there, what you're trying to accomplish, whether it's a personal goal, athletic goal, career goal, you name it, basically. So time back into all the experience and exposure that you've done, people that you've helped out in your current roles. Can you share with us, you probably have hundreds of success stories from training and advising all different kinds of patients, but could you share with us like maybe one or two that you've worked with? You work with all ages, all skill levels. So
you mean as far as a particular patient, you mean?
Sure, yeah.
So I have this older gentleman, we'll call him Mr. Jones. He knows who he is if he listens to this, but he came to me when he was in his, I want to say, early 60s. He was an executive at an insurance agency. He had recently lost weight, but he still had a lot of, he was kind of slouched over, a lot of issues going on there. So he came in as a patient, and we slowly got him, we made him actually like a half-inch taller. And I said to him, I said, we didn't make you a half-inch taller, we gave you better posture, but through the adjusting, through the rehabilitative exercises and everything else, we actually made him function better. So now he's able to stand better. I went through and taught him a lot of the kettlebell moves that we teach in Strong First, and he became very strong with all that. Then we started moving into some barbell stuff. We started teaching him barbell deadlift, and he got very strong with that too. So I think he just turned 70, so he's definitely he's a young 70, I would say. So I always tell people you have two ages. You have a chronological age, and you have a biological age. Chronological is from the day you're born. You can't change that. But you can change your biological age based on what you eat, how you sleep, if you get any exercise, all that kind of stuff. And so I had a patient a couple weeks ago come in, and he was 35. And I knew him well, but still I told him, I said, I'm going to be honest with you. You have the spine of someone who's 60 to 70 years old, and yet you're 35 years old. Now, obviously, I don't have a scientific background to be able to say I didn't give a test to tell him that he's 60 or 70. But I said, looking at your films here, your films are similar to someone who's 60 or 70. And I said, we need to change that. And you can change that. And I said, but it's going to take some hard work. Do you want to change that? And I asked them if they want to do it. If they don't want to do it, they'll tell me. If they do want to do it, then we'll continue on with the treatment plan and the protocols and go through it. And most people who put the work into their treatment plan, guess what? They get better. And I don't care whether you're seeing a medical doctor or a chiropractic doctor or a physical therapist, whatever else, do the work. If someone gives you a suggestion, do the work. You know, that's why you're seeing them. That's why you and or your insurance company is paying them to see you, because you want them to do, want to give you advice. So like you see your accountant, he says, well, you just saved this much for taxes and you don't do it. Well, you're going to have to come up with that at some point. So again, follow the advice that they give you, because it's very important. But again, this Mr. Jones, he's followed the advice, and he's a lot stronger and healthier now than he was 10 years ago. And so he was kind of a blessing to come into my life and everything else. And I consider him a good friend. I consider him an older brother I've never had. I'm the oldest in my family, so it was kind of cool to be able to meet him and work with him.
That's really great. Really interesting stories. I love that you're able to share these success stories with us on the Daily Grind. And I'm assuming you still get to stay in touch, or you hear back from past patients, current patients, things like that, or even on and off the field as a coach and as a football player too.
Oh yeah, actually I have a number of my patients that are the former kids when I coached them. So I had couple kids who were on my track team, a couple kids who were football players who are now into their late 20s, early 30s. So it's kind of cool to be able to see them, because I knew them back. I coached track from 4th to 8th grade, were on my team. In football, I coached 5th and 6th, 7th and 8th graders. So to see these people who were, last time I saw some were in their 13 or 14 years old, and now they're 25 and 26, and they got these injuries, but they remember who I was, remember what I did, they look me up, they come see me. It's kind of cool to see that and realize that, I knew this kid before puberty, I now know him after that. So again, they've grown up into a nice young man or woman in that kind of regard. But yeah, it's pretty darn cool to be able to see that happen. Plus, it also makes me older, I guess, now that I see him later on, because it's like, oh wow. But still, it's pretty darn cool.
That's great. Love it. Good things, positive vibes on the Daily Grind and whatnot. So, but yeah, speaking of the Daily Grind, what's upcoming on your radar, Dr. Hartle?
Well, with the COVID-19, a lot of things have been shut down as far as things we've been able to do. Back in April, actually, I taught my last certification for Strong First at the end of February down in Tampa, Florida. And then I was supposed to be in Italy in April, and then also in Germany in April, and then Las Vegas in June. But all those things were postponed. So what's coming up for me right now is I'm teaching a certification in Las Vegas in mid-August. Potentially one in Chicago at the end of July. Let's see, in September, my middle son's getting married, so that's cool. He's 25. And also in November, I'm going to England to teach there. So doing some travels, got San Diego in October, and got New York City hopefully in December. So that kind of rounds out the year for teaching-wise. Other than that, just treating a lot of good patients here in Fort Wayne and helping people and talking to great people like yourself. So thank you for having me on the podcast.
Sounds exciting. You got a lot of travels ahead of you. Safe travels. If I don't hear from you before you end up flying somewhere else, but yeah, that's really motivating, and it's great. You're teaching all over the place, and again, helping people in your area as well, all over the place in the U.S. and around the world. Speaking of motivation, Dr. Hartle, do you have a word of the day for our listeners out there?
I would say, you said a word or a phrase?
We call it the word of the day, but we do phrases. We like phrases too. Mm-hmm.
One of my favorites I teach at the certifications, I say plan the work, work to plan. Plan the work, work to plan. And that goes past strength training. It goes into, again, financial stuff, academic stuff. You got to plan the work. You got to kind of put down on a piece of paper. And I recommend people using a pen and paper or a pencil and paper, whatever else. To me, it's a little bit better than as far as typing on a computer, because you actually can see it real. And write down the plan. How are you going to go from point A to point B? And then after that, which is the harder part, you got to work the plan. A lot of people will, let's say you put together a 10-week training program. A lot of people will avoid that training program 2-3 weeks in because they're not seeing the results. Well, it takes a while for you to develop that. It's like think Michael Boyle, who's a good strength coach, I think he's the one who said this, but uses a farmer's analogy, meaning that when you put a seed in the ground, it takes 5-6 months later before that plant is a full-grown plant that you can harvest and sell in the market. But if you try to harvest it 2-3 weeks in, you're not going to get anything. You may not even have a shoot coming through the ground at that point, but you have to water it, fertilize it, take care of it, and all this stuff. And that same thing applies to strength training or anything else. Even like I said earlier, a financial plan. You got to just put $400 a month, but 3 months later, I don't have much money. Well, of course you're not going to have much money because you haven't let it build up. So the same thing. So plan to work to plan.
Really well said there. I think it fits perfectly in today's episode, along with the numerous quotes that we provide throughout the episode to keep our listeners inspired and whatnot. So that's great. Really great stuff there. And finally, without further ado, Dr. Hartle, if listeners have questions, comments, want to get in touch with you, want to follow you, how can they do so after the podcast?
I'm on Facebook as Michael Hartle. You can message me possibly on that. Use Messenger. Instagram, I'm Dr. Michael Hartle, all one word. They can look me up there. I'm also, my clinic Instagram is chiropower and everything. So also that's one way. I'm on Twitter as well as Dr. Michael Hartle. My website is chiropower.com, my clinic website. So there's many different ways that they can access me and call me, or email me, whatever else. It may take me a few days to get back to them because I'm a busy guy, as you can imagine. But again, it may take a few days to do that. But again, please respond. Call me or email me there. It'd be good.
Thank you, Dr. Hartle. We'll for sure put his contact info in today's show notes, as always. Thank you again for tuning in today's episode. A big thank you to Dr. Hartle for being on our podcast. Ways to find the Daily Grind. Follow us on Instagram at KJF Daily Grind and on Facebook as well. Check out our website at www.kjfwi.org. Feel free to follow your host, Kelly Fast, here on Instagram at Kelly J Lefty or on Twitter at Kelly J Lefty as well. Until next time, my name is Kelly Johnson and have a great day.